Welcome back. It is the Country Viewpoint here on Flow FM, and it's time to delve back into this research paper that's come out recently. It pertains to social interaction, reducing dementia risks and increasing longevity. And joining me on the line now is the lead author of the paper, Dr. Suraj Samtani. Great to be with you, Doctor. How are you?
Great to be with you, Ellis. I'm good. How are you?
Going very well indeed. The research is fascinating. So firstly, just give us an overview as to the background of the research that you've done on this paper. There's various components to it, so the floor's yours.
Thanks, Ellis. So where I work at the Center for Healthy Brain Aging at UNSW Sydney, we're really interested in preventing dementia and helping people to lead longer, healthier lives. What we were interested in looking at in this particular research paper was whether social interactions help us to prevent dementia and live a longer life. And what we did to look at this research question was we looked at data from many countries from around the world. So we had 14 different countries from every continent, and we had over 39,000 people who were followed up for many years. And we looked at lots of different social interactions, so whether they were married, whether they met up with friends or did activities in the community, whether they had social support, whether they felt lonely, whether they were satisfied with their relationships. And what was really interesting was that even after accounting for other risk factors for dementia, like physical health, like diabetes or the amount of activity or physical activity people do, we still found that social interactions were important to reduce our risk of dementia. And very specific social variables were important here.
Well, this question I'm going to ask you now comes from a fairly low base, but I feel as though such is the lack of understanding about dementia among everyday Australians that people will have similar questions to me in the sense that I just wonder, obviously with the brain, it's such a powerful organ and one that we still don't know so many things about. So when it comes to dementia and people in their latter stages in life getting dementia, how is it that when they do get dementia suddenly or cognitive decline that is quite steep in their life, how does it eventuate so suddenly that they can be at such a risk of just dying?
Well, we know that one of the things dementia does to the brain is it leads to damage to the brain. So you actually start losing the connections between different brain regions, and then the brain regions that are not being used start to die off. So what you actually see is people losing parts of their brain over time, and that's what causes people to pass away.
So when it comes to the research that you've done, which we've unpacked a fair bit of already with your colleague Sally Mahalingam, when it comes to the actual component of interaction, is it purely face-to-face interaction? Do you feel as though for the next generation of Australians who might be in this risk sort of category of being, in a position where they might develop dementia, we're going to see a bit of a difference whereby we'll have the boomer generation at least sort of being in a position where they're already equipped to engage with people socially online with social media? Is that going to play a role in decreasing their risk with getting dementia at all?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And what we found was that engaging at least monthly or weekly with family members or friends was important to reduce dementia risk. And having someone to confide in, open your heart to when you feel stressed, also reduce your risk of dementia. What we weren't able to do is separate face-to-face interactions with online interactions, but there's promising evidence from other studies coming out recently that shows that maybe online interactions might also help because it still allows us to practice our memory skills and language skills and also connect with other people. So I don't see why not.
So separate for us, Doctor, some of the components of interaction that you've seen when it comes to people living longer lives and avoiding going down the path of getting dementia. So we're talking about things like having relationships, not only with, people in an intimate relationship, but just having people close to them and being disease-free and things like that. Those are all the important sort of factors that lead to having a longer life. Is that what the research shows?
That's right, Alice. You are right on target there. So it wasn't actually whether people were in a romantic relationship that mattered. What mattered was they had someone to open their heart to when they feel stressed, someone to confide in, and then they were catching up with friends and family at least once a month. That reduced their risk of dementia. And two other things reduced the risk of mortality and help people to lead longer lives. That was doing community activities at least monthly, so things like volunteering or getting involved in Rotary or doing community games like playing cards. Or it was also living with other people that was important. And that wasn't just living with family, it could be living with anyone or could be living in intergenerational households. So that's really important as well.
Now, when it comes to people who live in really isolated parts of the country who might be getting on in their life, they might not necessarily have many people that are able to visit them purely logistically on a weekly or monthly basis or whatever it is, and thus they're isolated, they're getting older, and, they're getting more and more into that sort of territory where we're going to see them decline cognitively. For those people in those kinds of situations, in your opinion, how do we offer some sort of assistance there? I mean, if it's not going down the road of connecting online, then how can we become better in that space? Because as your research outlines, things like lifestyle factors obviously play a big part, and these people, both physically and mentally may no longer be able to incorporate that into their lifestyles.
Great question, Alice. So for a lot of people in our country living in regional, rural, or remote communities, there might not be the chance to interact with people very often. So what we advise is something is better than nothing. We looked at whether, even monthly interactions were helpful a few times a year. So I think whatever you can manage is my take-home message for our listeners. Any social interaction is better than none. And in terms of your overall health, please look after that as well, because it's things like, whenever you go get your hearing checked, if you're having difficulties with that, because that accounts for a lot of cases of dementia. When people don't get hearing aids, they stop interacting with other people. Also try to stay physically and mentally active, whether it's listening to the radio like this or reading the news or managing your physical risk, like cutting down on unhealthy food to reduce your risk of things like diabetes. All of that is really important.
Dr. Suraj Samtani is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of New South Wales. Before we let you go, just let us in on your professional academic background and any future studies that you know about that might take place in this space in the coming months and years.
Thanks, Alice. So I did my Bachelor of Psychology at the University of Sydney, and then I went on to do my Master's in Clinical Psychology and PhD in Clinical Psychology at UNSW Sydney in Randwick, where the Centre for Healthy Brain Aging is based. So I worked for several years as a clinical psychologist before coming back to academia, where I am now. And one of the things that we've got in the works now is actually rolling out an online intervention for people living in any part of Australia, whether it's urban or rural communities, for people to help them maintain their social connections. So if you hear about that study coming out from the Center for Healthy Brain Aging, please do participate in that, because that's our goal, is not just to find out what the risk factors are, but also to help people stay socially connected so that they can keep their brains healthy and bodies healthy.
Postdoctoral Fellow Dr. Suraj Samtani, thank you so much for your insights on the Country Viewpoint today. Really, really great to pick your brains on this topic, and all the very best with everything going forward. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Ellis, and thanks to all of our listeners.